The Joker, the Riddler, Two-Face, Bane. Pretty cool villains, but come on, we all know who Batman's greatest enemy truly is. That's right, Crazy-Quilt. He's got the gimmicks, the fashion sense, the colorful personality. In short, a perfect villain. Of course, him being so great naturally means he's appeared in countless amazing stories. Yeah, this list was not easy to make. I had to exclude a ton of pure masterpieces to keep it down to just 5. But anyway, without further ado, let's count down the 5 greatest Crazy-Quilt tales ever told. Number 5. The Crazy-Quilt Crimes, from Black Hawk's 180, published in 1963. This story was penciled by Dick Dillon. The writer is unknown, no doubt too modest to claim credit for this thrilling tour de force. In this story, that madcap meister of mischief, Crazy-Quilt, is at it again, pulling off yet another string of masterful misdeeds. This time his MO has changed entirely, no doubt to confuse the law, and not because of inconsistent writing. Instead of pulling off color-related crimes, Quilt steals seemingly random, valueless objects, like the hands of the City Hall clock and a chandelier at an airport. While committing these crimes, the clever crook boasts that he's stolen time and stolen light. Is Crazy-Quilt crazy? Or is there a method to his madness? Why, of course there is. We're dealing with a criminal mastermind here after all. While the heroes are busy chasing after Quilt and his useless loot, his henchmen are pulling off the actual crimes. So it was all a diversion. Or was it? Is Quilt even cleverer than we knew? And are there actually multiple layers to his capers? Well, the only ones who can figure that out and stop the archfoe is a bunch of grown men living together, the Black Hawks. So you might think this barely resembles Crazy-Quilt at all. His MO is completely different. He doesn't have any of his gimmicks. He's not blind like he usually is. He's got a completely different costume. And he's not even facing his usual foes, Batman, Robin, or the Boy Commandos. Like, where did the Black Hawks come from? But you know, the way I see it, change is good. You don't want the stories to get stale and repetitive after all. And you don't always have to give an actual explanation for the seemingly random and completely inconsistent change. Number 4. 3 Eyes for Crazy-Quilt, from The Boy Commandos 18, published in 1946. This one was penciled by Kurt Swan, but again the writer is unknown. I wonder why no one wants to take credit for these stories. Anyway, this is the second Crazy-Quilt story ever made, following his first appearance in The Boy Commandos number 15. Back in the 1940s, the arch foes of Quilt wasn't Batman and Robin, it was the Boy Commandos. So, as the first story established, Quilt can only see bright, vivid colors. Beyond that, he is completely blind. To be able to commit crimes, his henchmen had to paint the targeted buildings in vivid colors, or else Quilt couldn't even see the place he was robbing. This time around though, he's invented a new gadget, one that will make things a bit easier for him. Yep, this is the origin of his fabulous color helmet. It's a helmet that shines bright rays of colored light. Whatever Quilt points them at, he can see. Obviously a bit more convenient than painting the environment. Now armed with the incredible power of sight, the master criminal begins to plot a new diabolical heist, namely the plundering of the tomb of King Khafruba, an ancient Egyptian pharaoh who reportedly had a great love for vivid colors. Obviously an irresistible target for Crazy-Quilt. The only ones who can stop him are his sworn enemies, a grown man living together with 3 young boys, who aren't his sons, Rip Carter and the Boy Commandos. All of the Crazy-Quilt Boy Commando stories are great, but if I had to pick only one, I'd go with this one. I know, it might be a bit controversial to pick it over his first appearance. That one is a classic after all, and beloved by all the fans. But I don't know, me personally, I just prefer this one. The first appearance of his most awesome and iconic gadget. As if Quilt wasn't dangerous enough already, now he can even see. Number 3. Color Me Deadly, from Batman 316, published in 1979. This Bronze Age classic was penciled by Irv Novick and written by Len Wein. Wow, finally someone who dares admit they wrote a Crazy Quilt story. So in this one, that arch-fiend Crazy Quilt kidnaps a renowned eye surgeon. As Quilt explains, before being released from prison, he was informed by the prison doctor that he's gradually beginning to lose his sight. As in, completely. Soon he won't even be able to see bright colors anymore. He thus wants the eye surgeon to perform a revolutionary operation on his eyes that will fix the problem. Of course, those pesky busybodies, Batman and Robin, can't have that. No, they feel Quilt belongs back in prison, and all just because he kidnapped a guy, stole a piece of valuable equipment, and set a hospital on fire. And as if that wasn't bad enough, the story ends with Robin the boy blunder rendering Quilt completely blind with a dirty trick. And all just because he tried to kill them. If there ever was a true tragedy, then it is this story. Probably the most sympathetic Quilt story of them all. All he tried to do was get his eyesight back. Was that so wrong? This is one of those comics that makes you question who is really the hero and who is really the villain. Number 2. A Revenge of Rainbows. One hole in a quilt of madness. From Batman 368 and Detective Comics 535, published in 1983. The writer was Doug Mensch and the pencilers were Don Newton and Gene Colan. So this is the next chronological Quilt story, following the previous entry. After being blinded by that brat Robin, Quilt hires a computer genius to build a new helmet for him. A far more advanced helmet. For instance, this helmet links cameras directly into Quilt's brain, enabling him to see once again. As if that wasn't badass enough though, the helmet can also shoot powerful lasers. Yeah, you know, I don't know. They almost went a bit too far here and made Quilt too overpowered. I mean, how will Batman even stand a chance now? Anyway, after the computer genius has the gall to ask for his payment, Quilt does what anyone would do and kills him. He then sets out for revenge upon that infernal boy wonder. Robin will get what's coming to him. Of course, Quilt goes after the wrong Robin, as Dick Grayson has been replaced by Jason Todd by now. But yeah, you know, let's not talk about that. So obviously this story had to be high on the list. I mean, this is the most badass Crazy Quilt story of all time. He's shooting lasers, he can see again. And sure, he does get his ass kicked by a 12-year-old with only 2 days of crime-fighting experience, and even when he was completely blinded by Quilt's lights. But, you know, Robin doesn't really fight fair, so it could have happened to anyone. But yeah, a real badass story. And now for the greatest Crazy Quilt story of all time. Number 1, CrazyQuilt Comes Back. From Star Spangled Comics 123, published in 1951. This absolute masterpiece was written by Francie Heron and penciled by Jim Mooney. They should be very proud of themselves. This story is of great historical value, as it was the first time CrazyQuilt ever came face to face with that bird-brained boy blunder, the beginning of their legendary rivalry. So the comic begins with Quilt using his vast knowledge of colors to escape prison, because that's what colors are for. The cunning criminal then sets out on a new crime spree, announcing to the city that CrazyQuilt is back in town. No one really cares though and ignores him, so Quilt goes back home to mope and play his color organ. However, this gives him inspiration for an absolutely brilliant crime: steal the color of Gotham City. This he does, like turning a new color TV black and white. That'll teach him. Since the boy commandos are apparently retired or something, it's up to another young child to put a stop to this demented reign of terror, and that leads to the greatest clash in all of comics. Unfortunately, it's a clash Quilt loses in the end. Not even his harmless paint guns could stop the rampaging Robin. Those pesky kids, always ruining Quilt's clever plots. There's just no way to win against small children. This comic also gives us a great recap of Quilt's fascinating origin. He was once a renowned painter/gangster who was one fateful day shot in the face by a rival criminal, rendering him blind. He then forced a surgeon to perform an eye operation on him, but this operation only half succeeded, enabling him to see nothing but bright, vivid colors. Naturally, a career as a costume supervillain followed. Probably the best origin of all time. And there you have it, the 5 greatest Crazy Quilt stories ever told. If you're a quilt fan like I am, you really need to check these out, that is if you haven't already. Odds are you probably have though, because who hasn't read these classics? I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person in the entire world who actually sat down and read all the Crazy-Quilt Boy Commandos comics from the 1940s. That's obviously something a lot of people have done, and not just something an obsessive, insane person with no life would do. Anyway, as always, remember, Arkham Asylum awaits you in the next video.